Hi, my name is Maria Rodriguez. I'm a PhD student at the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UMD. Today, I'm going to talk to you about lead contamination in drinking water. Lead is a toxic metal that can be harmful to human health, even at low exposure levels. Lead is persistent and can accumulate in the body over time, where it is stored in bones along with calcium. Humans are exposed to lead in paint, dust, soil, air, and food, as well as drinking water. Young children, infants, and fetuses are particularly vulnerable to lead because the physical and behavioral effects of lead occur at lower exposure levels in children than in adults. In children, low levels of exposure have been linked to damage to the central and peripheral nervous system, learning disabilities, shorter stature, impaired hearing, and impaired formation and function of blood cells. Lead is also harmful to adults. Adults exposed to lead can suffer from cardiovascular effects, increased blood pressure, incidence of hypertension, decreased kidney function, and reproductive problems in both men and women. How do lead get into drinking water? Lead can enter drinking water when tumbling materials that contain lead corrode, especially where the water has high acidity or low mineral content. The most common sources of lead in drinking water are lead pipes, faucets, and fixtures. In homes with lead pipes that connect the home to the water main, also known as lead services lines, these pipes are typically the most significant source of lead in the water. Lead pipes are more likely to be found in older cities and homes built before 1986. Among homes without lead services lines, the most common problem is with brass or chrome-plated brass faucets and plumbing with lead solder. In 1991, EPA published a regulation to control lead and copper in drinking water. This regulation is known as the Lead and Copper Rule. The rule requires systems to monitor drinking water at customer taps. If lead concentration exceed an action level of 15 ppb or copper concentrations exceed an action level of 1.3 ppm in more than 10% of customer taps sampled, the system must undertake a number of additional actions to control corrosion. If the action level for lead is exceeded, the system must also inform the public about the steps they should take to protect their health and may have to replace lead services lines under their control. Some of the corrosion control strategies that drinking water systems can take are protective coating, alkalinity and pH adjustment, and corrosion inhibition. One of the protective coating strategies is zinc coating. In the electrochemical series, zinc has a more negative redox potential. If zinc is in conductive contact with iron in iron pipes, for example, and water is present, the zinc ions go into solution because oxidation of zinc is more likely than oxidation of iron. The exposed surface of the iron forms a cathode, and the zinc-coated surface of the pipe forms an anode. Zinc ions migrate to the damaged point and form a layer of scarring which stops the corrosion. The second corrosion control strategy is alkalinity and pH adjustment. Corrosion is affected by the alkalinity of water because alkalinity is given mostly by the carbonate and bicarbonate species in water. These species can react with lead and copper in pipes, forming insoluble products that form a passivation scale inside the pipes, preventing corrosion. Corrosion is also affected by the pH of water because at lower pH, the passivation scale dissolves in water, leaving the metal, exposed to oxidation agents in water. Also, the pH of water affects the domination chlorine species in water. For example, when HOCl is used in water treatment, the domination species at lower pH is HOCl, and the domination species at higher pH is OCl-. HOCl is a stronger oxidation agent than OCl-. Now let's talk about the case study related to the third corrosion strategy, that is corrosion inhibition. This is the case in Flint, Michigan. Before 2013, Flint's water was supplied by the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department. Detroit used orthophosphate as corrosion inhibitor because orthophosphate reacts with lead, forming insoluble lead phosphate that deposits over the inner surface of the pipes, forming a passivation layer. This layer protects the pipes from corrosion because the metal from the pipes is not exposed to oxidation agents in water. In early 2013, in order to save money, Flint officials decided to change the source of the city's water from the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department to the Carignan Water Authority. However, this authority was not ready to deliver the water because they were in the process of building a new pipeline to bring water from Lake Huron. This meant that officials in the city of Flint needed to find a short-term solution while the new pipeline was being built. They decided to use water from the local Flint River that they would clean in water treatment plants. After the switch, first residents noticed fall-tasting reddish water coming out of their taps. Then, in August and September 2014, the city issued alerts about Escherichia coli contamination and boil advisory for parts of Flint. Then the city added bleach to kill bacteria, but there was high natural organic matter present in the Flint River. Then the bleach reacted with this dissolved organic matter from the river, forming trihalomethanes. Trihalomethanes are linked with numerous health concerns, including liver, kidney, lung, and heart problems. To coagulate the excess of organic matter and prevent the formation of trihalomethanes, Flint added additional iron chloride. The ferric ions bind organic matter, but the chloride ions were hanging around in the water and they are corrosive, and no additional anti-corrosion measures were taken. Also, the pH of the water from the Flint water treatment plants was too low. By maintaining a relatively high pH around 10, the solubility of another lead compound that contributes to the protective layer, that is lead carbonate, decreases. This helps to maintain the protective layer of the pipes. If the pH is too low, the protective layer may dissolve and fall off. Utilities usually add orthophosphate to the water as part of corrosion control plans because this chemical reduces the acidity of the water, releasing hydroxide ions, which forms insoluble lead hydroxides. Orthophosphate also favors the formation of insoluble lead phosphates. These two insoluble salts, the lead hydroxides and lead phosphates, contribute to the protective passivation layer. In this slide, you can see the equilibrium reactions for the formation of passivation scales in lead pipes, iron pipes, and zinc oxide pipes. The solubility product constants are very small, meaning that the phosphate can form insoluble salts with these three metals. Because Flint City stopped using orthophosphate as corrosion inhibitor, the lead phosphate scale started to dissolve, releasing lead ions into the water. Also, the metal surface of the pipe was exposed to oxidation agents in water, such as dissolved oxygen. The metal was oxidized and leached into the water. Another consequence of the lack of orthophosphate is that the ions in water can help form a galvanic cell on the pipe surface, causing pitting corrosion in pipe walls. In the anode of this galvanic cell, the iron or lead is oxidized to iron 2+ or lead 2+. In the cathode of the galvanic cell, the dissolved oxygen is reduced to water. If chloride ions are present in water, they surround the positively charged pit to keep it neutral. But without ions to keep the neutrality, the reaction would rapidly reach equilibrium. When chlorine ions are used to disinfect water, killing bacteria, chlorine is reduced to chloride ion when exposed to lead pipe wall. A galvanic cell is formed. In the anode of this cell, lead is oxidized to lead 2+, and in the cathode of this cell, chlorine is reduced to chloride. Then more chlorine is needed to keep disinfection levels. Chloride ions contribute to pipe corrosion and lead leaching. But when pipe wall is covered in phosphate scale, the chlorine level remains stable. Another important factor in pipe corrosion is the chloride to sulfate mass ratio. A ratio of 0.5 and below helps reduce lead leaching, but about 0.5 increases lead corrosion. As this ratio increases, a galvanic cell is formed with the lead as an anode. Due to higher chloride to sulfate mass ratio, more chloride ions are transported to the anode, increasing the leaching rate of the lead. Flint is not the only case in the US. In November 2000, the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority changed secondary disinfection chemicals from flicorine to chloramine in order to comply with new disinfection by product regulations. This change in disinfections destabilizes insoluble lead scale layers on pipe surfaces and increases the incidence of dissolved and particulate lead. Both chlorine and chloramine treatment are EPA-approved methods used safely for many decades. However, these two disinfectants interact differently with metal water infrastructure. Chloramine residual enhanced galvanic corrosion, and a hydrocerrucid was the controlling solid phase in the pipe's scale. This is a more soluble compound which released more total dissolved lead. When free chlorine was used, it has a higher oxidation reduction potential, and the lead oxide was the controlling solid phase in the pipe's scale. This is more insoluble than the hydrocerrucid. Another case in the US was in Providence, Rhode Island. Providence water changed water's pH from 10.3 to 9.7 in an attempt to reduce lead solubility. If you see the graph in the slide, lead solubility is the lowest at pH 9.7. But layers of lead-bearing iron rust had built up in pipes. Over time, this lead-bearing iron rust layer broke down, releasing lead into the water. This problem was signaled by red-colored water, the same as in Flint, Michigan. In this last slide, you can see the numeric explanation of the influence of pH in the dissolution of iron rust scale. When pH is lowered, iron rust breaks down, free dissolved iron 3+ increases, and the dissolution of rust-free previously bound lead into the water occurs. If you have questions, feel free to email me. Thanks for attending this lecture.